"You're not man enough to leave," she said, that smug little grin curling like a worm at the edge of her wine glass. I was halfway through a mouthful of Cabernet when she dropped the line. Right there, in front of 6 of our so-called friends. And the worst part? No one flinched. Some chuckled. A few glanced at me like I was supposed to join the joke. Like I was supposed to laugh at my own castration. I didn't. I swallowed the wine, not the insult. My fork hit the plate with the soft clink of finality, and I looked at her, really looked. Not at the woman I married, but at the stranger she'd become. The makeup was heavier now, the dresses tighter, the laugh louder, all part of the performance. She was a woman who needed an audience, and I was no longer playing the role she assigned me. I didn't yell, didn't break a dish or toss a drink like some reality show idiot. I just dabbed the corners of my mouth with the cloth napkin, stood up, and said, "We'll see." Her grin faltered for half a breath. That half breath was all I needed. I left the restaurant calmly, like a man who forgot something in the car. Only this time, I wasn't coming back. Now listen, most of you reading this already know the feeling. You work, you provide, you stay faithful. You pay the bills. You keep your damn promises. And somehow, that becomes boring, predictable, unsexy, until the same woman who once clutched your arm in public is now calling you not man enough in front of strangers over duck confit. And if you've gotten even a bit of satisfaction from reading stories like this, where guys like us stop being doormats and start being strategic, then consider subscribing. Over 98% of folks never hit that button, and it tells our team these stories matter. It keeps us going. Anyway, the thing is, that dinner wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the conclusion of a very long prelude. A prelude she never noticed, because she was too busy basking in her own echo chamber of petty superiority. But me? I'd been noticing everything. The whisper-laugh phone calls she took in the guest room. The way her shopping bags started coming from higher-end boutiques, even though I hadn't seen a raise in years. And the kicker? Her sudden interest in privacy on our shared iPad. So no, I didn't just leave on a whim. I'd been quietly preparing for that walkout for months. Maybe longer. It started with small things. Unlinking my accounts from joint email. Rerouting paychecks to a private bank. Creating digital backups of every document with my name or hers on it. She thought I was losing my edge. I was sharpening it. That night, after I left the restaurant, I didn't go to a bar or a hotel. I drove home, parked 3 houses down so she wouldn't hear the garage, and walked into my own house like a thief. Except I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. She wasn't home yet. Of course she wasn't. She'd be sipping after-dinner cocktails, basking in the attention of the table, probably relishing how she put her man in his place. Cute. Real cute. Upstairs, I opened my office, the one room in the house she never bothered with unless she needed my signature on something she didn't read. My laptop came with me. Passport, birth certificate, life insurance docs, all went into the slim fireproof bag I'd hidden behind the HVAC panel. A second duffel was already packed in the trunk of my car. I left her one thing. An envelope, unsealed, sitting neatly in her underwear drawer beneath the velvet-lined tray she kept her jewelry in. Just a plain white envelope. No angry note. Just the word, tomorrow. Because tomorrow, Marla's world would start collapsing. Not in an explosion, but in a methodical, choking collapse. Like a building whose beams had been quietly loosened one at a time. She said I wasn't man enough to leave. She had no idea who she was talking to. The thing about being in finance for 34 years is you learn the value of preparation. Not just with numbers, with people, too. Especially the ones who smile while twisting the knife. I sat down in my office, the glow of the monitor reflecting off the glass of scotch I didn't drink. The spreadsheet was already open. 3 tabs, accounts, liabilities, contingency. Each one color-coded, time-stamped, backed up twice. Her name used to be on everything. Now, it was a series of fading gray cells, like her respect, vanishing line by line. I clicked through each institution like I was checking off chores on a Sunday. Bank of New Haven closed. Mutual fund rolled into solo custody. Joint investment account liquidated. Half went into my Roth, the other half into a trust she'd never know existed. The household credit card, the one she swiped like a wand at every boutique within a 40-mile radius, was still technically active, but pending. I had requested cancellation 2 days ago. Today, I opened the final notice from the issuer. Authorized user privileges removed. Card to be deactivated within 24 hours. That would be tomorrow. The timing couldn't be more poetic. Her plastic throne was already melting. One last step. I navigated to the utilities dashboard. Water, electric, internet, autopay turned off. I scheduled termination notices, all for the same date, a week from now. I wouldn't be there, and neither would the payments. If she wanted the lights on, she could figure out how to earn that. She hadn't worked a day in the past 6 years. I opened the budget sheet and hovered over the auto transfer, the monthly deposit I'd been sending to our shared account. Not that she ever noticed it. Money just appeared, like magic. Swipe, click, spend. That was her religion. No? I changed the value from $3,800 to $0. My finger hovered above enter for a moment. Not out of hesitation. Out of ritual. A silent farewell. A financial funeral. Then I pressed the key. Done. I leaned back in the chair. That familiar ache in my chest, the one I used to mistake for heartburn or shame or some abstract hope that she'd notice what she was doing, it was gone. Not replaced by rage. Not even by satisfaction. Just silence. There's a special kind of grief that comes from realizing someone didn't fail to understand you. They understood you perfectly and just didn't care. That was Marla. She knew who I was. Knew what I valued. She just bet I was too soft, too old, too loyal to ever draw a line. She was about to find out that men like me don't draw lines. We calculate them. This wasn't some vindictive tantrum. This was the quiet unraveling of a contract, emotional and financial. She laughed when she said I wasn't man enough to leave. Laughed like a child taunting a chained dog. She didn't realize the gate had been open for weeks. She just never imagined I'd walk through it. The irony is that she thought control looked like attention, dominance, noise. But real control is what happens when you build a lever long enough and wait. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't arguing. I was just exiting. Elegantly. Cleanly. Without blood, but with receipts. I backed up the folders once more onto a flash drive and slipped it into my blazer pocket. I kept my backup on an encrypted cloud she didn't know existed. Redundancy. That's what years in risk management teach you. Prepare for worst-case scenarios and pray you never need the escape hatch. Only this time, I built it for myself. She was still out that night, probably Instagramming her filet mignon, tagging fake smiles on top of hollow champagne toasts. She had no clue that the life she thought she was running was about to eject her like a bad tenant from a lease she never read. And the beauty of it? I didn't have to say a word. Marla came home at 1:37 a.m., heels in hand, mascara slightly smudged in that way she thought looked effortless, but actually just looked tired. She didn't notice me sitting in the dark den, the glow from the hallway catching her profile as she giggled at something on her phone, probably texting that idiot with the man bun who kept reacting to her thirst traps. She floated past like I was air, which, in fairness, I'd made myself into, quiet, invisible, undisturbed. She went straight up the stairs, dropped her clutch on the landing like a breadcrumb, and staggered into the bedroom. 5 minutes later, I heard her snore, soft at first, then wheezy, with that hiccuped inhale that made me consider buying noise-canceling headphones 3 years ago. That sound used to mean comfort. Now, it just meant opportunity. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I stood up and got to work. First, the hallway closet. The fireproof lockbox slid smoothly into my carry-on, tucked between 2 pairs of socks. It held our passports, the deed to my parents' cabin in Vermont, which she always insisted we sell, too rustic, too boring, and my old Marine dog tags. I paused when I saw them, fingers brushing the cold steel. Funny how something that used to define you can end up gathering dust beneath a pile of her Pilates gear. I moved quietly through the house, the way a man does when he knows its every creak. The 3rd stair from the bottom, skip it. The floorboard near the kitchen island, toe it sideways. I didn't want to wake her, not because I feared confrontation, but because this required surgical precision. My office was next. Door opened silently. IWD 40'd the hinges weeks ago. The laptop, already backed up, slid neatly into my shoulder bag. The drawers clicked shut in succession. Tax returns, insurance forms, prenup copies, all packed. The key to the locked filing cabinet went in my coat pocket. I wiped the mouse and keyboard, not for fingerprints, but out of habit. You don't work 3 decades in financial audits without learning the subtle art of vanishing gracefully. Before I shut the office door for the last time, I turned and looked at the space. Clean, controlled, utilitarian. The way I always kept it. The only room in the house untouched by her ever-shifting aesthetics. No weird, live, laugh, love signs. No lavender candles. No silk throw pillows that served no function other than to be fluffed. I locked the door with the spare key and slid it under the hallway rug. Let her call a locksmith. Finally, I moved to the bedroom. She was sprawled diagonally across the bed, one arm flung over the nightstand, her phone still in her hand, screen dimmed. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I opened the drawer on her side of the bed and gently placed a single white envelope inside. Just a plain thing. No wax seal. No dramatic flourish. The only thing written on the front. Tomorrow. The paper inside. 1 page. Neatly folded. Not angry. Not even cruel. Just clarifying. I watched her for a moment. Not in love. Not in anger. Just with the detached curiosity of someone watching a house they once lived in, now up for sale. She used to be beautiful in the kind of way that made time bend. The soft light at the end of a long day. A drink on the porch. Her laugh that bubbled up when she read something ridiculous. But now, lying there with her hair matted and her fake lashes half detached, she just looked overdressed for a party that was already over. I reached into the drawer one more time and slid the jewelry tray aside. Underneath were receipts from her spa trips, her business lunches, and one from a boutique where she bought a men's tie for someone who wasn't me. That tie turned out to be useful, but more on that later. I didn't wake her. I just walked out the front door at 2:23 a.m., keys in my hand, no jacket, no fanfare. Just the quiet click of freedom. She had no idea the fairy tale had already ended. By the time the sun peeked over the rooftops, I was already sipping burnt motel coffee from a paper cup and reviewing the final checklist on my laptop. Not a Hilton or a Marriott, too traceable, too expensive. Just a no-frills place off Route 23 where no one asked questions if you paid in cash. Which I did. The Wi-Fi was slow, but I didn't need speed. I needed precision. This part wasn't personal. This was logistics. The cold, unflinching sweep of a man closing open circuits. First stop, the bank. I logged in, authenticated with two-factor, and pulled up the account labeled Joint Household Expenses. Cute name, considering I'd been the only one putting money in it for the past 3 years while she spun it like she was trying to win a prize for speed. I selected Close Account. Confirmed. The prompt warned me this could not be undone. Exactly. Next, I moved on to the 2 credit cards she thought were hers. The first was technically a business card in my name, tied to my consulting LLC, the one she used for emergencies like silk scarves and dog spa appointments. I removed her as an authorized user, confirmed the action, then called the issuer. Yes, I'd like to terminate all linked user accounts and deactivate the associated card ending in 2401. Effective immediately. Would you like to send a notification to the authorized party? No, I said, calm as winter. I prefer she finds out organically. The woman on the line gave a polite chuckle. She had no idea. The second card, the heavy one with the gold chip and sky-high limit, was already flagged for cancellation. I just had to pull the trigger. 1 click. Done. From there, I logged into the Helic dashboard, the home equity line of credit she dipped into for what she called renovations, but usually ended up being furniture she'd returned 2 weeks later for something trendier. I didn't just close it. I transferred the available equity into the trust I'd set up 2 months ago and initiated the freeze. Legally airtight. She'd be locked out of everything by lunchtime. Next came utilities again. I updated the settings to switch billing to her name starting Friday. Electricity, water, gas, trash pickup, all the invisible things she never noticed but always expected. The way she expected clean sheets, a working dishwasher, and the driveway plowed after every snowstorm. That was the real trick, wasn't it? She thought the world ran on magic. No, it ran on men like me. Silent men. Boring men. Reliable men. The same men who eventually vanish like smoke and take the structure with them. Final call of the morning was to the insurance broker. Yeah, I'd like to remove a driver from my auto policy, I said. Name's Marla. She'll be taking out her own policy from now on. Are you sure? The broker asked. It may cause a rate increase on her end. I'm okay with that. After I hung up, I took a long look at the spreadsheet. Every account, every asset, every exposure, trimmed, closed, rerouted, buried. Like a financial hitman wiping a target off the grid. Marla was still asleep when I sent the final confirmations. I could picture it, silk sheets, blackout curtains drawn, the faint hangover hum in her temples as she dreamed of brunch and Botox. She had no idea she'd wake up to a life with no handles. She'd try to swipe a card later today and get a beep. Try to log into our joint account and get an error. Maybe she'd think it was fraud. Maybe she'd think it was a glitch. Maybe she'd call customer service and get the polite voice that says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this account has been terminated by the primary account holder." And she'll sit there, blinking at the screen, clutching her latte, surrounded by her friends, all pretending not to stare while the illusion of her kingdom cracks wide open. And the best part? I didn't have to lift my voice once. I just lifted the pin. Marla walked into the boutique like she owned the building. Not rented, owned. That signature click of her heels, the hair pulled into an effortless-looking updo that actually took 2 products and a curling wand. The mirrored sunglasses worn indoors like she was waiting for paparazzi to leap out from behind the racks. She even gave a little half-smile to the teenage girl folding shirts in the corner, the kind that wasn't quite, "Hello," but more like "You may resume breathing now. I've arrived." Following behind her were Tasha and Elise, her brunch brigade. The ones who laughed on cue, gasped at the right moments, and always asked, "And what did Dennis say about that?" Like it was some sort of sitcom punchline. Truth was, Dennis hadn't said a damn thing in weeks. And that silence, that infuriating, steady silence, had started to gnaw at her. But she pushed that thought down where the yoga and champagne lived. Today wasn't about him. It was about these new St. Laurents she saw on Instagram, nude patent leather, 4-inch heel, perfect toe box, power shoes, divorce shoes. She strutted to the back display and plucked them like fruit. "Size 7, she said to the salesgirl without breaking eye contact. "And if you bring anything with a platform sole, I walk." The girl nodded quickly and disappeared. 20 minutes later, Marla was standing at the register with her prize. Tasha was pretending to admire a scarf she'd never buy. Elise was already calculating the likes the outing would get if she tagged the store in her Instagram story. And Marla? She was in her element, running her hand down the glossy box like it was silk. She pulled out her wallet with a flourish. Black card. Gold chip. She handed it over with that same smirk she wore at dinner the night before, the one Dennis would have recognized instantly. The one that meant "This is my world, and I build it on your spine." The cashier, a polite young man with a buzz cut and the expression of someone used to rich women with sharp tongues, took the card and inserted it into the terminal. Then, he frowned. Marla noticed. Something wrong. He didn't answer right away. He read the screen again. Then his eyebrows twitched barely, and he opened a drawer behind the counter. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, pulling out a small pair of silver scissors, "but this card's been deactivated." Marla laughed. Actually laughed. "You're joking. Run it again." He held it up, glanced at her once, almost apologetically, and snipped it straight down the middle. Then again, crosswise. For neat pieces, dropped into a clear plastic box labeled Security Compliance, CC/FRD. Her laugh cut off like a wire had snapped in her throat. That's not possible," she said, blinking. "It's his account." The cashier nodded, lips pursed. "Yes, ma'am. And it appears he's no longer authorized you to use it." The boutique went quiet. Elise let out the softest, "Oh," you ever heard. Tasha looked down into her handbag like she was studying the stitching. And Marla, for the first time in years, had nothing to say. No comeback. No flick of the wrist. No performance. Just her hand still hovering where the card used to be. "What about," she started, fumbling for her wallet, pulling out the second card, the backup. Swipe. Declined. She tried again. Declined. A third. Declined. The silence was like a vice, slow and tightening. She looked around like someone might explain this away. Some cosmic glitch, some IT outage, some ridiculous clerical error. But all she saw were eyes. Curious. Pitying. A few amused. Tasha finally muttered, "Do you want us to spot you?" Marla's head snapped toward her, venom flashing behind her panic. "No. No, it's just, Dennis is messing with me. He's being a child. But even as she said it, the words rang hollow. Because somewhere deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a man being petty. This was architecture. This was the work of someone who had been building something silently, precisely, beneath her nose. She left the boutique without the shoes, without the card, without the pride she'd walked in with. And yet, that was just the welcome mat. She hadn't even opened the envelope back home. Not yet. Not until tomorrow. But her today had already started to collapse. Marla slammed the car door so hard it echoed off the neighbor's vinyl siding. Her heels, the ones she had to wear even when angry, stabbed into the driveway with every furious step. She yanked open the front door, didn't even bother with her usual greeting to the dog, which Dennis had taken, by the way, another minor betrayal she hadn't noticed until just now, and stormed straight to the kitchen where she kept the iPad. She unlocked it with her thumb, opened the banking app, and waited. Session expired. She frowned. Hit it again. Please log in. That was new. She tried her usual email and password combo, the one Dennis had set up back when they still finished each other's sentences and actually shared things. Incorrect credentials. She squinted, tapped, forgot password, and waited for the reset link. Nothing came. She refreshed. Checked spam. Nothing. Brows now knitted into a sharp line. She opened the credit card app. This one she was sure of. It logged in, briefly, and then flickered to the login screen again with a bright red banner. Your session has been terminated by the primary account holder. Please contact support. She dropped the iPad on the granite counter like it had insulted her. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself, jabbing her phone screen with her acrylic thumbnail. She hit Dennis's contact, still saved under D money bag, from a more optimistic time. Ring. Ring. Voicemail. She hung up. Called again. Ring. Ring. Voicemail. Again. Dennis, this isn't funny. You need to call me back right now. Something's wrong with the cards. Fix it. Or I swear. She stopped herself, almost laughed. Swear what? That she'd yell louder? She looked around the kitchen. Something felt different. The place didn't smell like him anymore. No hint of his aftershave in the entryway. No shoes by the door. No laptop charging at the dining room outlet. Her chest started to feel tight, like the walls were pressing in. She stormed upstairs, into his office, locked. Seriously? She rattled the knob like that would magically remind the house who she was. The deadbolt didn't care. Neither did Dennis. Next stop, the bedroom. She flung open drawers looking for what? Evidence. Instructions? Anything. That's when she found it. An envelope. Plain, white, resting neatly beneath the velvet tray that held her grandmother's earrings and 3 pieces of jewelry she'd bought herself and told people Dennis had surprised her with. Written on the front, in his handwriting, the blocky, accountant-style scrawl, were 2 words. Tomorrow. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she opened it. Inside, a spreadsheet, printed and stapled. She recognized the formatting, Dennis's signature efficiency. Multiple tabs, accounts closed, liabilities removed, access revoked, and her personal favorite, trust disbursements, confidential. Tucked beneath that were 4 official-looking letters, each stamped and signed. One from the attorney she met once during the prenup discussions, who smiled too politely. One from the bank. One from the brokerage firm. And one from a private investigator she didn't recognize, until she saw the attached photo of herself, blurry but unmistakable, mid-embrace with a man in a parking garage. Her mouth went dry. At the bottom of the stack, on a single sheet of paper, was a typed message. Just one line. You mock my silence. Now it's all you have left. Her hands dropped to her lap. The papers fluttered to the floor like snow. For the first time, she understood. This wasn't about a card. This wasn't about a petty spat or a man throwing a fit. Dennis hadn't left. He'd erased himself from their finances, from the property, from the relationship. She could scream, call, threaten all she wanted. But there was no one to argue with. No door to pound on. He was gone, and he'd planned every second of it. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived. Hand-delivered. No postage. No return address. Just a firm knock at the door around noon and a man in a dark blazer who didn't bother making eye contact. Mrs. Morton? Yes. He handed her the envelope and walked off before she could ask anything. Not a word. Not a smirk. Just a job done. Marla stood there in the entryway in a silk robe and slippers, staring at the envelope like it might contain anthrax. She took it to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of Pinot at noon like it was 5 p.m., and sat down with the solemnity of someone who started to suspect what's coming but still prays to be wrong. She peeled it open. First page, notice of intent to file for legal separation. Filed under Dennis Morton. Dated the morning after she laughed in his face at dinner. Second page, summary of financial disentanglement. All accounts previously held jointly had been reassigned, closed, or transferred to Dennis's name or trust. Property title had been adjusted accordingly. Her name was missing from every asset. Then came the dagger. Alimony not applicable per Clause 14C of the prenuptial agreement. Subclause invoked. Marital violation, including but not limited to infidelity. Marla froze. She squinted at the line again like the ink might shift into something less damning. Attached behind the letter was an itemized evidentiary summary, all from a private digital forensics firm. She flipped through it with growing nausea. An email to Ty with subject line, "He's out of town. I miss your hands." A photo of a dinner reservation for two made under the name M. Morton at the Hyatt rooftop bar on a Tuesday. Dennis was working a client audit in Des Moines. A string of Facebook messages sent from her burner account, the one she forgot Dennis had once helped her set up when she was avoiding toxic friends. And then the jewel of the collection, a printed message from Ty himself. "He's just funding your lifestyle, babe. I'm the one giving you something to feel." It was dated 6 weeks before Dennis left. Marla slammed the papers onto the marble counter like they might catch fire. Her breath hitched. No tears, not yet. Anger always came first with her. She paced. Called Elise. Got voicemail. Tried Tasha. Straight to voicemail too. What the hell? It was like someone had put her on mute. Then her phone buzzed with a new email. From Dennis's lawyer. Digital copy attached for your records. You are advised to retain legal counsel before making any further financial activity under jointly held credit. She hurled the phone across the couch, knocking over a candle that splashed lavender wax onto the upholstery. She didn't notice. The thing that broke her wasn't even the paperwork. It was the realization that Dennis hadn't just found out. He had known. For months. And worse, he had stayed quiet. He let her walk around like a queen in a paper palace while he unthreaded the foundation brick by brick, waiting for the whole thing to collapse under its own weight. She tried to compose a message to him, fingers trembling. "You vindictive bastard." Then deleted it. She tried another. "Can we just talk?" Deleted that, too. There was no tone she could strike that wouldn't expose how cornered she was. Because this wasn't some break or rough patch. This was legal. This was final. And it had teeth. Marla had always believed she could manipulate her way out of anything. Cry a little, threaten a little, flirt a little. But Dennis hadn't just walked away. He'd weaponized everything she underestimated. By Saturday, Marla had convinced herself there was still a card left to play. Dennis was being dramatic. Calculated, yes, but still just a man. And men were emotional creatures, especially when wounded. He'd overreacted, lawyered up, pulled the rug out to feel powerful, fine. But he wasn't cold. Not like Ty. Ty was heat. Ty was danger. Ty was the text at 11:37 p.m. saying, "Wish you were here instead." Ty was the hand on her thigh during lunch at that overpriced sushi place where Dennis once took her for their 5th anniversary. Ty would answer. He always did. She dialed. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. Her voice cracked slightly on the 3rd attempt. "Ty? Hey, it's me. Something's happened. Dennis, he left. It's complicated. Can we talk?" "Nothing." She texted. "Can I come over? Need you. Read." No reply. She waited 5 minutes, then another 10. Then typed again, slower this time. "I'm serious. This is bad. Please don't leave me hanging." No dots. No typing bubble. Nothing. Her fingers were clenched so tight around the phone she nearly dropped it when it buzzed 15 minutes later. Heart in her throat, she looked. Not from Ty. Just a spam ad for skin cream. She stood up too fast and nearly knocked over the wine glass she'd just poured, the 3rd one. The world spun slightly. She sat back down, dialing again. This time, the call didn't even ring. Blocked. She stared at the screen, willing it to be a mistake. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he switched carriers. Maybe. No. Marla was many things. Delusional, maybe, self-absorbed, definitely. But stupid wasn't one of them. She opened their chat thread. Gone. Just like that. Deleted. Like she never existed in his life. Like the hotel rooms, the whispered meetups, the gifts, the stupid engraved cufflinks she bought him using Dennis's card, were all part of a temporary script. A role she played. A role he'd replaced. She opened his Instagram. Private. Profile picture changed. No mutuals. She called Elise, then Tasha again. Still voicemail. She opened a bottle of vodka this time. Something stronger than Pinot. Her robe had a red stain on it from when she flailed earlier and knocked a glass into the counter. She didn't change. She sat on the kitchen floor, back against the dishwasher, knees drawn up, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The screen dimmed, then locked. This couldn't be happening. Ty was supposed to be the future. She'd tolerated Dennis's dullness, his damn budgeting apps, his silent mornings for years because of Ty. Because he was exciting, wild, rebellious. And he made her feel wanted. Not seen, mind you wanted. Like an object you lean toward, use, and dispose of. Only now she realized. Ty hadn't wanted her. He'd wanted the perks of proximity. The nice restaurants she picked up. The perfume Dennis bought. The weekend getaway business trips she funded and Ty enjoyed. Ty didn't block her. He blocked the cash flow. And now, with Dennis gone and the money cut off, she wasn't valuable anymore. Not to Ty. Not to her friends who'd mysteriously stopped answering calls. Not even to herself, if she were being honest. The phone buzzed one more time. Email. Subject. Notice of access revocation, company card. Apparently, her employer had flagged her charges after Dennis's documentation exposed non-work-related activity. A second investigation was under review. She laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound that bounced off the tiled walls. Then she cried. Alone. With no man. No money. And no more exits. It was raining. Not the poetic kind of rain you read about in novels, but a spiteful, bone-chilling drizzle that made everything feel grayer than it already was. The kind of weather that ruins makeup and makes bad decisions seem a little more romantic. Marla stood outside the nondescript brick building with its chipped paint and buzzing porch light, soaked to her knees, mascara bleeding into the corners of her eyes. She tried to fix her hair in the car mirror, but the humidity had declared war on her curls. She buzzed the intercom. Nothing. She buzzed again, holding the button longer this time. Still nothing. Then, just as she was about to press it a third time, she heard the faint click of a door unlocking from within, followed by the soft creak of the interior door opening. Not all the way. Just enough. There was a chain still on. Dennis? She called, voice cracking like old wood. A shadow moved behind the door. She could smell his aftershave, the same one she used to mock for being too old-fashioned, now suddenly grounding, comforting, real. Please, she said, stepping closer. Can we just talk? Just for a minute. I didn't come here to fight. No answer. Dennis, I get it. You're hurt. I made mistakes. I said things. But we were married, for God's sake. Doesn't that mean something to you? He didn't respond. But there was movement, deliberate. She heard a soft scrape on the inside. Then, through the narrow crack in the doorway, a small folded paper was passed out. Not handed. Passed. Like a document slid to a prisoner. She blinked at it. Hesitated. Then took it. Before she could say anything else, the door shut. Gently. Not slammed. Not angry. Just closed. And the lock clicked into place like the lid of a casket. Marla unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. Rain smudged the ink as she read. You said I wasn't man enough. Turns out, I was too much man for you to respect. No signature. She stared at the page, the words blurring as her eyes welled up. Her first instinct was rage. He had planned this. Scripted it. Like she was nothing more than an audience member in his silent revenge opera. But then, that collapsed into something colder. More honest. She wasn't the one who had been underestimated. He was. She'd built a life on the assumption that Dennis would always be there, quiet, loyal, reliable, A financial drip she could unplug and replug whenever it suited her emotional theater. And when she smirked across that dinner table and mocked his manhood, she hadn't realized she was detonating the last bridge she had left. Marla sat down on the damp concrete, her designer coat soaking through instantly. She didn't care. She didn't even wipe the mascara. She just sat there, holding the note in one hand and her car keys in the other, like she couldn't decide which one she wanted to throw further. Neighbors passed by, glancing, whispering. A delivery guy stepped over her legs with a paper bag and a muttered damn. She didn't move, because it wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the moment she realized the person she'd taken for granted, the man she thought was too dull to hurt her, had done the one thing she never believed he could. He stopped loving her. And worse, he did it without saying a word. 3 weeks later, Marla sat in a dull gray office chair at the end of the hallway where the HR manager told her to wait. She'd shown up with a fake calm, dressed carefully in her professional but am still hot outfit, the one that usually earned her compliments or, at the very least, deference. Today, no one looked twice. Her company badge had stopped working that morning. She'd smiled at the security guard, tried to play it off like, "Oh, you know tech." But he didn't even pretend to laugh. He just checked the list, paused, and asked her to follow him to the waiting area near the glass conference room. That's where she saw it, the manila folder on the desk with her name written in all caps. The top of the stack was a copy of her corporate card transactions. Spa visits, a weekend at a resort she swore was for client networking, dinners that had nothing to do with business, unless the business was pretending she still mattered. The internal audit had started quietly. Dennis had made sure of that. The documentation he submitted, anonymized, redacted where necessary, but pointed like a scalpel, included receipts, timestamps, screenshots, enough to raise questions from people who normally didn't ask any. When they froze her card, she tried to get ahead of it. Applied for a new personal credit line that night, banking on her good standing. Declined. She tried a second card. Declined. She finally called the bank in desperation. "There must be a mistake," she said, pacing her condo barefoot in her robe at 2 a.m. There wasn't. Her credit had been buoyed for years by Dennis's consistency, by the invisible financial scaffolding he built, and she lived on like a decorative gargoyle. Without it, the system recalibrated, and it did not like what it saw. One by one, things unraveled. Her social circle shrank overnight. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who'd been quietly separated, whose name now floated around in company Slack channels like an HR cautionary tale. Even Tasha and Elise stopped replying to her texts. The boutique girls, the same ones who once complimented her bag, held doors for her, smiled too wide, now offered tight-lipped nods. One even avoided eye contact entirely. It wasn't scandal. It was worse. It was the slow rot of irrelevance. She came home that evening and poured herself a drink. No music, no TV, just silence. She stared out at the skyline through the condo window Dennis had once insisted was too overpriced for the view. He'd been right about that, too. Then her laptop pinged. Email. Sender, D. Morton. Subject. No subject. No attachments. Just a single sentence. "You gambled on weakness. I just stopped playing." Her breath caught. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. It didn't gloat. It simply stated what she now had no way to argue against. He never needed to hurt her, just to remove himself. Remove the support, the presence, the tolerance, and let gravity do the rest. She closed the laptop. This was it. Not a dramatic collapse, not a scandal splashed across the news. Just a woman, alone, in a condo she couldn't afford, surrounded by handbags she couldn't sell fast enough, staring at a glass of wine she no longer had the appetite to drink. And the sound she heard wasn't an explosion. It was silence. The same silence she once mocked. Now, it was the only thing left.